Sure. But it is a day when we think about reforming, Reformation Sunday, a day to recall what the truth is, the truth that sets us free. It's a truth that calls us to be together today. We are made free by this truth. We are a people of freedom. I've always grown up with that, and perhaps you have too, as a U.S. citizen. As a child of God, we are free to come here, free to elect our officials, free to be governed by the body of the people, free to have elections that send you 5,372 cards, all fancy printed in the mail, right? Anybody get any of these besides me? These would be about 1% of them, I think. And I can't help but wonder if that, if the funds that paid for all this stuff, which is pretty much, I don't know what anybody stands for except for they don't like the one that they are running against. You notice that? I wonder what would happen if all that money was used in the school or for hungry people or something. Wouldn't that be a little bit better use than this? Oh, goodness, what a year. Political freedom is not free, as you know. Sometimes we forget that. It never was free. It never will be free. It requires participation. And it's hard to participate in something like this. No? Very hard. Very hard to, who in the world do you vote for? Because what do you stand for? And using our Christian values, the truth that Christ teaches us, and doing our best to translate that to government, how do we make that happen with this kind of thing going on? It requires participation. It's not easy freedom. It's not cheap freedom. Especially when we get mixed up who is first in our lives and who is second and third. Luther said that baptized Christians are free lords of all, beholden to no one, and at the same time, with those wonderful contradictions that he gives us, that he shared, because he was a man of quite a few words, as you know. Because we are free, then we are slaves to all, beholden to everyone, echoing the commandment that Jesus gives us to love God and love neighbor as ourselves. The whole idea is to reform, and was to reform the world at that time. It wasn't necessarily to start a new branch of Christianity, although we know that is what happened. But the reformers wanted to stand up against political and religious wrongdoings in the powers of the day. That's what they were up to. They spoke against government that had gone bad. They spoke against cruel capitalism. They spoke against the misnomers of the church at the time, many of which have been corrected, some of which still need correcting. The argument today, as I consider the 2 points of government and government gone bad and cruel capitalism, if you will, the argument is small government versus big government, right? We should have fewer taxes, less government, that people do their thing more on one side. On the other side, we need to have more taxes and more government so people can have the services they need, right? That's what I kind of boil it down to. But the issue is not the size of the government. The issue to me is simply good and bad government. What's good government? What's bad government? Good government would do this: live by the principles of neighborliness. It's really not that hard. Said it already twice this morning. Love God, love your neighbor as yourself. Now we know it's harder than that, but the principle is correct. The principle is right, and the principle of neighborliness is what good government ought to be about. Good government would be the common benefit. As we take a vote on this particular matter, whatever it is, what's the best thing for the most people? I haven't heard that question asked. We can't get to that question because we have to have filibusters and we have to have refusals to participate, and it's either I get my way or I ain't going to play the game, not going to do it, right? What a time. It's a false argument when we think only of large versus small government. Christians, I would suggest, could protest against bad government and require and demand good government. You might want to protest cruel capitalism. We're prophets in our day, the wonderful system that helps us have so many things available. In fact, if you're like me, choices to the point where I can't even comprehend the choices anymore. When you walk down the aisle of the grocery store or Walmart or wherever it is, it's choice after choice after choice. When capitalism is driven purely by profits, business goes unchecked and unethical decisions are made. In fact, many of our universities, which originally had a religious beginning, don't even teach ethics anymore, let alone encourage participation in a faith in God. In the past 20 years, our economic system, 30 years, take your pick, has destroyed many lives. And most of you who have lived here in town for a number of years have seen the ravages of an economic system gone bad. How many persons filled with despair? How many we see each week at the food pantry? Because even if they have a job, it's not enough to pay for the lights, to buy food, to have the rent paid, to keep clothes on their backs, the basics. And so perhaps we could protest for a nurturing capitalism that has consideration for everyone. If you're a human being, you're born, you're alive, you're willing and able to participate in some way. So that if there was something this simple, if you had a full-time job in America for whatever it is, whether you're sweeping the streets, keeping the sewers running, or the most important person in the community with the biggest company, you can afford to live in that community where you happen to find yourself and where you are serving. Wouldn't that make sense? But in our nation, recently, the wages of the few have multiplied and skyrocketed like a shooting star. Millions upon millions of dollars. I've made the comment several times about our sports figures. And yep, it's a dangerous sport, football and all that, and it's a lot of fun to watch. I'm sure I'm not against football. But really, $5 million, $20 million, $30 million, $1 million to play a game on Sunday afternoon that could be done if you had a real job all week. You could still play the game on Sunday afternoon, after church, of course. This kind of capitalism would consider the needs of all, would consider the world God made us, as we thought about Genesis, when the Spirit moved over the waters and created life, that incredible gift of Mother Earth, which gets ignored sometimes with economic systems run amok. For our spiritual bankruptcies that we have understood when we become slaves to our jobs, when we can't earn a living, when we are filled not with hope, but with despair. When capitalism would consider the whole community, the social needs of everybody, and serve them, to simply love our neighbors as ourselves. Of course, just about every store in town today is open on Sundays, a little indicator of what the drivers really are and what the gods, small g, really are in our midst. How about an economy that measures human flourishing rather than the price index or the Dow Jones or the New York Stock Exchange? This is God's plan. This is the truth that sets us free this morning and calls us to be His people, Monday through Saturday, Sunday reserved for worship and for rest. This is God's plan. This is what we say is the truth, and the truth will make you free. The truth is, as the scripture said, we all fall short of this glory, hence our need for God. In spite of all of the ways that we would like to think we are in control and we are in charge, and with a little self-help manual and what have you, we'll be just fine. The truth is, we'd be a mess without God. And God knows that. God doesn't demand us. He offers us His gift, free, unadulterated, graceful gift to every person who believes that He sent His Son to save us, to be with us. It's a humble and a truthful thing to face today when we realize our shortcomings and the power of what it means to be free of all people and yet slave of all people. That great paradox of faith that we've been taught about and given. It is a mighty gift indeed. You are indeed a free people, free to love and serve as slave to all. Free to love and serve as Jesus first loved you. Free to love and serve to bring hope to a world with much despair. And I, for one, am grateful for this gift and the opportunity to proclaim Christ's word, Pray that it takes root inside of you and blooms this week to give you courage when it's time to demand good government and an economy that works for everyone. It's God's way. Bless you in your efforts to do that. And might God empower us all to be a part in it. Amen.